Not sure if you can hear it. It's Ghostland Observatory. Some boys based in Texas, from Texas, making music. They're pretty good. Here in the shop this evening, putting together a little list of things to talk about. I have found that generally leads to a more productive discussion. I'm also going to limit myself to the amount that I talk about reloading, but I am going to be working on some reloading things while I talk. This is important. Oh, that's the other thing I want to talk about. Routers. Not wood routers, networking routers. Okay, let's turn the music down a little bit, but it feels funky. Also come over to the old freezer, give myself a couple of glugs of the Bulleit Rye. It's syrupy because it's so cold. I think for Christmas this year, I'm going to buy myself a nice, like a sound bar, maybe. I think that'd be pretty cool, because then I could just... Right now it's hooked up to some computer speakers, which is nice, because they were free. Is that better? Oh yeah, keeping it funky. So welcome to the shop this evening. Thanks for joining me. I'm here in my casual clothes, drinking some rye. Back when I was podcasting regularly, which I think this is kind of replacing. Maybe I get back to it, who knows. But when I was podcasting regularly, I would always talk about what I was drinking that evening. I always felt like I had to drink a little bit to get myself amped up for the task at hand. And I always talked about Bulleit Rye. Bulleit Rye, to me at least, is just a go-to fluid, you know? Like, you really can't go wrong. There's probably better rye out there, and for sure there's better booze out there in general, but you just really can't do much better than Bulleit Rye. So, it's affordable, relatively affordable. I think if you're drinking a lot of rye, it's probably not affordable. But if you drink like I do, which is sporadically, but with some focus, then it's pretty good. Which is a great little segue into a topic that I did want to cover on the vlog tonight. I believe that's what it's called, the vlog. Turn this so it doesn't auto-lock it. You can just leave this list up. So, I have a lot of things to write. I always have a lot of things to write. But I felt like in a post-T-Tag world, I've been a little more free to write what I want or what have you. You know, not that T-Tag really ever put any restrictions on what I wrote until the very end. But I felt a little more free as it relates to my writing. The issue for me is that and this has always been an issue, is that it's very hard for me to get started on whatever I'm writing. And so I found a pretty reliable formula, which is for me to down a heroic amount of liquor and start smoking a criminal amount of cigars, and that seems to really get the juices flowing. And I want to say it's Hemingway, and I feel like such a tool quoting Hemingway because, like, ugh. But I'm fairly certain it was Hemingway who talked about getting, like, the process of writing, and he said that you should always stop when you're in the groove, and that way you can come back to it, kind of pick up where you left off, and um, you'll feel like in the zone. So that's been my experience. That's very true. I've tried to put that into practice as much as I can. It's a little hard sometimes, so it doesn't always happen. Because sometimes I get addicted to the high of like getting something written, like really cranking something out. And then womp womp, I'm, at kind of a stopped place, or I get to kind of a stalling place with whatever I'm writing, and then it's like, oh shit, you don't have anything left, and so things remain kind of like unfinished. So the starting process is very hard, and that is where rye whiskey and tobacco products come into play. For some reason, that just seems to really get it flowing for me. I don't know if it's I know that the booze works just because you just feel a little awkward when you're having to start off a new thought. And alcohol, the reason that people go to bars to meet people is because booze relaxes them, and you feel like you can come out with some stuff. So that's the start of that. And so I think the cigar thing is that I really only ever, I'm not a huge cigar guy. Like, I don't smoke cigars regularly. The only time that I really ever smoke cigars is when I'm pontificating with my friends. I'm with a good group of dudes, and we're all hanging out. We're drinking, good scotch, have a cigar or two, talk about the world, and you're really being introspective, which I think is very important to writing, and to writing well. And then when I'm actually writing. So for me, that's always kind of a great way to get into the mindset. And like if you read any college study guides, they would say like find an album that you want to listen to while you study, and then listen to that album while you're taking the test, and that'll help you get into the mind space of whatever it was that you're doing. For me, a lot of those actions are very similar. Like I feel like if I have a drink in hand and I've got a cigar lit up and I can smell that cigar and I can smell the booze and it's kind of this mind space, I can start writing. Now the other one, and this is terribly embarrassing, but I will come out with it, is that I do my best and most productive writing across the board, in no matter what the topic is, when I'm listening to Pandora's station for Skrillex, which if you're not familiar is really garbage, awful, like industrial techno something or another. It's heinous. But for some reason, it helps. So my typical kind of formula for breaking a bout of writer's block, and that's the thing, like if I stay up with writing and I write 2 to 3 times a week, I don't have these problems. But if I go a couple weeks without writing, getting started really sucks. And so cigars, rye whiskey, and Skrillex. So it's terrible. Like, nobody likes that part of me, I hope. The other thing, and this is, not a lot of people, come on, walk that one back. Like, don't be inflammatory. When I wrote for T-Tag for a long time, and I had the pleasure of working for Robert Farago, who's the owner of T-Tag. And Robert and I didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, which is good. That's just good conflict to have. Like, you should not always agree with people all the time. Robert and I didn't agree on a lot of stuff, which is fine, as I mentioned. But he gave me a really good piece of advice once. Hold on. Gotta grab a die, because I did say I was going to keep on loading. Robert gave me a really good piece of advice one time, which was focus all of your effort and energy on writing the perfect intro. And, T-Tag, for all their sins, is a very popular website by traffic. And part of the reason for that is that all of the intros, and you only see a little bit of a snippet of that on the front page of T-Tag, all those intros are usually fairly captivating. And that's a Robert Farago thing. And Robert was super insistent with me. Like, I would write these big pieces, and he would be like, it's great once you get in the groove, but like the first couple sentences are terrible. Like you need to spend all your time focused on that. Like don't edit the rest of it, just edit the first like 3 or 4 sentences. And so, a great way for me to get started writing. I only share this because it took me a long time to figure out what the formula was for me to get writing. And I think like I enjoyed writing as a pastime, I guess, for a long time. And I wrote in like, high school, and would write notes on Facebook and stuff that I thought were funny. When it got to the point where like I've never really had deadlines, but like at least at a minimum self-imposed deadlines, or like someone would send me a piece of gear and I know I can't just never write something. Like I do have to write something for them. It became important to understand the formula for how to get started and how to get these things out. And that's just a good part of introspection and understanding. So for me, working on that intro, and that sometimes requires, a little bit of brown liquor and some tobacco products and some terrible music. And once that part's done, and once those first couple sentences are done, everything starts to really flow. And then once it's flowing, cut it off. You're in the zone, you're being creative, start something else. So earlier this week, I started 6 articles, which is crazy for me. It was like a very productive night for me. My shop still smells like cigars because I smoked a lot of them. I went to the cigar store and I was like, I'll pick up a number of cigars that allows me to do 1 or 2 of these, like 2 of these nights, 2 to 3 of these nights, depending on how I'm feeling. And I ended up smoking everything that I had, which made me feel like shit the next day. Even though they were great cigars, I paid a lot of money and I bought quality. It's sold a lot and stupid, and I drank a lot, which was stupid. But I got 6 articles started, and by started I mean like I wrote 400 to 600 words for each of them. So I wrote a lot, like almost, I think, I didn't keep like a firm count, but probably 3,000 words, so like that's a pretty productive night for me. Gotta grab a bucket. It's called the Lube Bin, and it's just for lube and cases. In this case, $2.43. Put it in here with my homebrew case lube, which if you are reading written by TylerKey.com, which I hope you are, you can read about written by Tyler Key. You can read about homebrew case lube. It's pungent. I need to go update that review, actually, because one of the things I found, and by the way, talking about setting up your press, here's my rock checker. So, for pretty much everything that I reload, centerfire rifle, which is everything I reload, with the exception of 7-mag, and I will load some 7-mag later, so you'll see that, I run my press to the top of the stroke. We'll back that off a little bit. I run it to the top of the stroke, and then I screw that die down so it's making good contact, and then I go just a little bit at a time until you feel it start to kind of cam over, and that is, in my experience, about perfect, and then tighten it down so that you're set there. The difference with 7-mag is that I actually measure the shoulder, and the reason that I do that is because 7-mag is a belted magnum, and it actually headspaces off that belt, and it's a little more sensitive to case, to shoulder setback. And a lot of people say that they're pretty severe accuracy, what am I trying to say? There's severe accuracy gains to be made by pretty closely watching that shoulder setback. So I do that, but I don't do it for anything else because everything else is rimmed. rebated rim, or not a rebated rim. What the fuck is it called? Anyway, they all look like this, and they're just less sensitive to it, so I don't care as much. But people say the 7-mag is like that. I haven't tried to like test out loads where one's cammed over and like one's just bumping the shoulders back 2000s or whatever. The stuff that I put together shoots sub-minute, like pretty handily, like 6/10, 7/10, which out of a belted Magnum, I'm fine with. Using like it's Black Hills brass from some ammo that I bought, so I shouldn't say bought. Black Hills sent me that ammo. It was bought and paid for with my time. How about that? But that's the only case that I do that with. So we talked about writing stuff. Right? Yeah, we talked about that. Oh, just being handy. I said that I would talk about routers. That was on the list. Let's remove this thing, because we've talked about that now. We've talked about writing things. Let's talk about routers. Put that up. So, over here, right there-ish, is a Linksys router. And the reason that it's in my shop is because the wireless comes from the house over there. And the signal strength is not quite enough to come all the way over here to this very weak antenna inside a Roku stick, which is right under there, which allows that television to play Netflix, Pandora, and Amazon Prime. All things that I like to do while I'm out here in the shop. So, I had this old router, and I read some articles and talked to some friends. I have a lot of very smart friends. That's a very Donald Trump thing to say. I have a lot of very smart friends. Huge friends. Amazing friends. The best friends. Anyway, those smart friends, and the internet, because the internet is one of my friends, most of the time, indicated that you could create a repeater using an old router, and what a repeater does is just takes the incoming signal, boosts it, and repeats it. Duh. Loading block, there it is. So, that requires you to reflash that router with a new firmware, which in this case is DDWRT, which is an open source firmware. And then you use DDWRT to program the router to authenticate to the signal coming from the house, and then rebroadcast that signal and allow other devices to connect to it. So I did all those things this week because I got a new router for the house, which is infinitely better than the one I had. But that meant that this router was not, it was broadcasting bullshit, so it couldn't connect to anything. So I had to go back in, and I'd forgotten all the IPs for it, so I couldn't log into it, so I had to reflash the whole thing and then start over from scratch. First world struggles. But I got it done. Come on. Where are you at? No. No. Yes. Yeah, you're bad. So I got it done, and I feel much better now because I'm able to broadcast the signal from the house, which is pretty cool. So, if you ever get the opportunity to do a little bit of home networking, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. You're going to learn a lot. Learn a lot about yourself. And you're going to get like a great feeling of pride and satisfaction because that's just a device you can buy, by the way. Like, you can buy a repeater for like $20 on Amazon. So don't go out and buy a router just to reflash it with DDWRT. But you'll have fun if you do. I had a lot of fun. It was frustrating for a second, and then I got it figured out. Overcame, did some problem solving. Now we're resizing 308. See, got through 243, no problem. Only had a couple cases. Which is a great segue, actually. Yes! So we're done talking about routers. So I, 'cause 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 Screen just went dark. So I talked to my friend Mark at Accurate Ordnance this week. And if you remember, Accurate Ordnance sponsored last week's video log. Mostly because they had a koozie nearby. Anyway, I was talking to Mark this week. We were catching up. And it's a nice cam over. Just a little. Just a touch. Don't want to work your brass too hard. Anyway, I was talking to Mark. And we were talking about load development strategies, specifically because I am thinking about chambering or getting my first, chambering my first. Let's move all these over here too. Getting my first rifle in a true wildcat, something that has little to no factory ammo support, and that case is 6506. A square. It's a 30-06 neck down to 6.5, which is the way the Lord intended things to be done. Everything is breaking. Anyway, 6506 is 30-06 narrowed down to accept 6.5 bullets, and there are a lot of benefits to that. Number one, the 6.5s are a very efficient cartridge, or a very efficient bullet. Pardon my slip up there. The 6.5s are very efficient, especially as you get into the higher weights, like the 140 and 147 class bullets. They fly really well through the air, especially when you start to push them. And well, actually I have one. I mean, I have 30-06, so. I have here a 30-06 for the uninitiated. This is some M2 Ball. It's Greek HXP. This is very old surplus ammo. It's for my Garand. Anyway, this is next to it a 308, so same bullet, basically. Same bullet, but you'll see quite a bit more case capacity. More case capacity means more powder, and more powder means more speed. You may also remember that, I believe it was this week, a man writing for American Rifleman, which is the NRA's free magazine you get when you're an NRA member, so I hear, wrote a piece about how the 30-06 is old and dead and it's bullshit and it's outdated because 308 does everything that 30-06 does and blah, 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 blah. And it's the sort of thing that you can just debate around the fire forever with your buddies. And it raised, oh god, if you ever want to see people get dumb about their specific hobby, write an article about how one case is better than another case. It's ridiculous. Now, all that to say, 6506 is better. Not really, though. 6506 is a nice little wildcat, though, and it does have some factory support, so instead of me basically making up a round or going, 6 PPC or something just kind of weird, like understood and well established, but still kind of weird, 6506 actually does have, factory support. Like, occasionally Nosler makes ammo. I think Black Hills makes ammo for it. It's also fairly easy to load for because it's a 30-06 neck down to 6.5. Like, it's not anything major. It's a reasonable thing, and it's also like 7.62 to 6.5 millimeter. It's just not crazy, but it is crazy enough for a guy who hand loads and wants a little bit of a challenge. Now, I mentioned case capacity because I like shorter barrels when possible. Now, I have a 28-inch 7-mag, and I feel like that makes some degree of sense. It's a couple inches too long, but it does make sense. It does allow me to push some pretty absurd velocities with some really slick 7mm bullets, and because it's a Magnum, the powder's there, so it kind of makes sense. As you start to chop barrel back, and I like 18 inches is kind of my perfect do-it-all barrel length because it provides enough velocity, but you can still stick a silencer to the end, which I like for most things. And with a 7-inch silencer, that takes you to a functional 25-inch barrel length. Still on the longish side. I think a 16-inch barrel is probably better, but it's still relatively handy. Tons of hunting rifles are 22 to 24-inch barrels, and people have been doing that for a real long time with no problems. So, anyway, all that to say, the problem with an 18-inch barrel is you do lose a little bit of velocity. So what 6506 allows me to do is essentially equalize lost velocity with powder. And what people say about 30-06 versus 308 is that it's got maybe 100 to 150 feet per second on the next, like on a comparable 308. So if you're pushing a 150 grain bullet out of a 308 and the same 150 grain bullet out of a 30-06, you might get 100 to 150 feet per second difference. Now, that turns largely into an argument of semantics when you're talking about, whatever, comparable rifles and you write for American Rifleman. When you're talking about length, the general rule of thumb is 25 feet per second per inch of barrel length that you cut off. So 100 to 150 feet per second is 4 to 6 inches, which is about how much I like to cut off a barrel. So it would give me the velocity. So the other kind of comparable cartridge would be like 260 Remington or 6.5 Creedmoor in the short action, because that'd be 6.5. If you cut one of those back to 18 inches, you'd see a pretty marked velocity difference. Not to say that that's not a great barrel length for those cartridges, but you're still going to see some velocity loss. 22 inches is probably better, and a 6506 essentially creates a 22-inch barrel. Now, there's a lot more blast, there's a lot more unburned powder, there's a lot more whatever. This is only going to have a silencer on it, so that doesn't really matter to me. So, all that to say, I was talking to Mark. You like how I brought it back? I brought it back. I knew I'd bring it back. I knew I'd come back to it. I had to think about what I was talking about originally. Anyway, I was talking to Mark. We were talking about 6506. We were talking about custom throating for whatever thing. And that's... Okay, last time I'm going to talk about 6506. I'm building this barrel. I'm having a barrel cut for this, for a long-action Savage that uses a AI pattern 5-round magazine, but that AI pattern magazine is set up for 338 Lapua, which is a magnum length Tubuku round. 30-06 and 6506 can have a lot more length, and a lot more length means a lot more powder, and a lot more powder means a lot more velocity. So, I was talking to Mark about whether I should essentially load a round as long as possible while still being safe. And the rule of thumb is that you should have as much bullet, like there's bearing surface, whatever. You should have one bullet's diameter of seating in the case. And so probably the easiest way to test that or to measure that would be to either take a bullet and just seat it, just a touch seat it, measure the overall length, and then go down, in this case, 264, and that would give you your theoretical overall length. Probably back that up 10% and see what that length looks like. My guess is that's probably with like a 147 ELD or a 143 ELDX or whatever. That's probably maybe like 20, 30, 40, maybe in 50 thousandths longer than what book would call for on 6506. So essentially what I would do is have the guys at AO spin up a barrel. I would give them like 3 or 4 loaded rounds that are loaded to kind of that max length I'm looking for, and they would throat the barrel to meet that. Food for thought. Like I had said last week, I guess. Last week, whenever I recorded something last, I talked about how, like, the day you start reloading is the day you, like, really get serious about, shooting. This is proof of that. This is the sort of stuff that, like, these are the conversations that come up when you start reloading. So, now doing some 300 Blackout. Just rolling through it. Just a night in the shop. So, I talked to Mark about all that, and while we were talking about reloading. Getting back. That's what I was originally talking about. And we were talking about kind of reloading plans and like how you get to where you want to be with like a perfect load. Because he was asking me, how are you going to load for the 6506? So, the kind of common wisdom, like if you talk to some of the old timers, out at the range about like how to load, they tell you like go in the book and you load up 3 rounds at whatever the factory length is. Now don't fuck with that. Just load up. You get 3 rounds that length at a bunch of powder charges, right? Like, say the maximum's 42 grains, and you'll load you up some at 39, 39.3, 39.6, 30, up the way, right? And then you'll shoot those. You'll shoot for 3-round groups, and you'll see what shoots best. There's a couple problems with that, in my humble opinion. And that's a valid loading strategy. In fact, I used that loading strategy to load 300 Blackout this weekend. So there's a time and a place for it. There's no right or wrong. And plenty of people made really accurate loads for a really long time. That ain't right. Is a Alright, that looks like really quite shouldered. Let's see how this one turns out. Alright. So a lot of people made good ammo for a long time, doing just that. Ooh, see, this one to throw away. I found that when they start to get these little chips, you can just kind of wish the camera would focus on it. Focus! See it. Once they start to get those little chips right there, that turns into a split. Not too far after. Into the trash she goes. So, we're talking about loading strategy. So people have been loading that way for a long time. It's gone well for them. Plenty of people have won championships loading that way. Mama and daddy and everybody's got a grandpappy hunting load that works great. Like, there is nothing wrong with that. What you'll find, and what I found, and what led me down a different path as far as loading stuff went, was, especially for loading for rifles that I'm going to shoot a little bit further out, what the damn hell, was that I found that stuff that I worked up using that loading methodology would shoot great one day, and then it wouldn't shoot so great another day. And that was concerning to me. I didn't know why that was the case. It was of great concern to me, actually, because I wanted my loads to be good all the time. And part of it was getting a really accurate rifle and figuring out that, like, in a rifle that always shot, like, half-minute groups, or really, like, third-minute groups when we're talking about, 3-round groups. I was seeing stuff that was shooting, like, come on, get in there. I was seeing stuff that was shooting awesome one day, like just bug holes, and then was shooting terribly another day. And that sort of thing just was a no-go for me. Like, I wanted to have good quality ammo that shot well all the time, and that led me to doing ladder testing. And ladder testing is really cool. In fact, I got one over here. I got a couple, actually, because I think they're such cool targets. So, this is a ladder test I shot at 200 yards, the 90 grain ballistic tip in a 243. So I mark the bullets with color, they leave an imprint, and then I kind of go back and color them up. So you'll see that, like, these are green, and the green ones have no vertical dispersion at all, whereas, like, this red one right there has a lot of vertical dispersion, and this blue one has a lot of vertical dispersion as well, and that's bad. We want to look for rounds that impact fairly close to each other. The other thing I do is check velocity while I'm doing this. And so, green, pretty close to each other. If I look down here, green is, and this is no color, by the way. So right there is no color, no color. I didn't draw a line between those, but I should have. Green, pretty flat. Yellow, really flat. Blue, not flat. Red, not flat. Green, flat. No color, also flat. So ladder testing says that 44.3 and 44.5 grains of powder at whatever length I chose shoot really well. They have very little vertical dispersion. The horizontal dispersion you see is because I was shooting in the wind. The 90 grain BT is a pretty good bullet. I was also shooting with like a 9 power hunting scope, so there's some error present. And that's part of why ladder testing has some issues as well. You do need to make sure you're shooting at the exact same target, shooting all arounds the same. You're trying to keep things as similar as possible. I also recorded velocity as part of this, and that is the part that Mark is most interested in. So you'll see 2852, 2877, 2902, 2934, 2967, 3016. So I was going up by like 3/10 grain increments, and you'll see that, like, this is, what would that be, 17, 18, it's like 25-ish feet per second. This one is like on the nose, 25 feet per second. This one is 32 feet per second. And I'm talking about the velocity differences between, there we go, velocity differences between them. We're looking at 33 feet per second, and then there's like a really big jump here. So this is not the most encouraging thing. I also didn't see any pressure signs here. So that's kind of the other frustrating thing, is like, there's a book pressure max, and you should definitely not exceed that pressure max if you don't feel comfortable. But once you do feel comfortable, I have found that most books, especially Nosler's books, are really wildly conservative, and that you'll chase powders, and you'll chase length, and you'll chase primer. In a lot of cases, just put more fucking powder in the case, and you're going to see the velocity that you're looking for. So Mark is an advocate of, and I'm coming around to the idea. I'm still not. There's a third method. It's a modification. Berger actually recommends it, and the Berger reloading guide says that the way to, and this is because Berger's bullets are traditionally sensitive to jump, and so that's distance from the lands. So Berger says, establish whatever your max overall length by chamber is, right? And load 3 rounds at your minimum charge at that length, and then load 3 rounds, no, they say 6, I'm sorry, my bad. Load 6 at max, 6 15 thousandths, 30 thousandths, and 45 thousandths back from those maximums. So you should end up with 24 loaded rounds. And then all that's at the minimum charge. You take that out to the range. You shoot 2 3-shot groups at each charge. And record velocity, do whatever, but check out what those are. check out what those are doing. And Berger even puts in the book, it will become very apparent what your node for accuracy is. And in my experience, that's true. You'll find some bug hole group, and that's the length that you should work with for your workups going forward. I think that's a pretty valid strategy. The only problem that happens is sometimes your max overall length, because the way the chamber is throated, goes beyond what you can load in a magazine. So you should really go at mag length and then back, whatever. Go with your gut. Go with your heart on that one. But you'll be able to find the kind of ideal length. And then Berger suggests going through whatever you do after that. So if it's ladder testing, if it's 3-shot groupings, if it's whatever, do it after that, but use that length. And then once you find an accurate load, using whatever methodology it is, tweak overall length like 5 thousandths or something like that. I just do not go to that level with my loading. So that's 24 rounds you're going to burn up, figuring out your overall length. It's another, depending on how you load, I mean, if you load like 3-shot groups, and even if you do ladder tests with 3-shot groups, I mean, you may want to try out 18 different powder charges. So you're in 24, then you're in, you're in 24, then you're in another 50 maybe for a workup. Could be 45, could be, I mean, like, you're going to be into it for at least, 60 plus rounds just doing load development. And you still don't have like a load. Like, you're still kind of figuring out where it is. It's a very inefficient way to do things. Now, it's totally worth it if you're shooting F-class and you need to be in the tents, which is what a lot of people shooting Berger bullets are doing. For your average guy shooting like Nosler ballistic tips or whatever for hunting season, and he just wants a good, accurate load, it's maybe not the best way. So what Mark advocates, and not to put anything against Mark, but like Mark only shoots really accurate rifles. So my experience shooting one of Mark's rifles that I own is that I can load up 10 charge weights, and I can load them sloppy, and I can do whatever, and they'll all shoot sub-minute out of one of his rifles. If all you're looking is for sub-minute accuracy, you can basically ladle powder into a case, and as long as it's safe, it's going to shoot fine. In fact, it's a good visual. I think I have one over here. Yes. So this is a much prettier ladder test that I shot earlier this year, doing a load workup for Nosler's 175 grain RDF out of an accurate ordnance built 308. And so you'll see the colors here. We have blues and greens and reds, whatever. I think I ended up at the red load, maybe the green load. Yeah, 'cause it's like 44.3. It's like pretty spicy. But you'll see that this is shot at 230 yards, so sub-minute would be 2.3 inches. And I have my calipers here. So let me set these to 2.3 inches. Okay, so this is the point to point. We should add 308 to this so that we can measure edge to edge. So 2.6 08. Come on. Okay, close enough. Close enough for government work. Okay, so this is now 2.608, which is 2.3. So 2.3 inches would be 1 minute plus 308, so we can measure edge to edge. Okay, so looking at vertical spread, you'll see that we're well under 1 minute. And going over to horizontal spread, we are just like, whoop, whoop, just a hair outside. And that's really like, that could be the wind kicked it, right? Kick that one out, and that's a sub-minute group right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 shots. And we are just like squeaking it in under sub-minute at 230 yards. So that's a 10-shot group. That's a 10-shot group. Yeah, we got that one and that one that are weird fucking kickers. That's the very lowest charge and the very highest charge, right? So between 43 and 44.3, so 1.3 grains of powder, which is a lot. Still shooting a sub-minute group at 230 yards. That's what an accurate rifle gets you, and I can, like, that's what a custom-built accurate rifle will get you. So, I'm saying all that to say, like, I love Mark. Mark is great. Accurate Ordnance builds awesome rifles. They're the only rifle builder for me. Mark's methods are exclusively tested on really accurate rifles. And so they may not be the thing that works for your factory $700 rifle. That's something I'm actually testing because, you know, science. So, all that prelude. When I was walking out to my shop, I said, you know, you should only spend like 5 minutes talking about reloading. You should talk about other stuff. Fail. Okay, so all that prelude to say that Mark just advocates loading up 1 round at each of however many charge weights you want. Pick a number, any number. Strapping your magneto speed to the end and recording velocity. Now, obviously, having more loads is better, but if you want to be a super cheap ass, which I do, you load to the same length, same primer, same brass, same all, you know, stuff, good reloading practices. But you go up maybe 2/10 to 3/10 of a grain, kind of depending on what you're loading, and load up a big old charge. Like, I loaded up 18 rounds the other day, all different charge weights. Load all that stuff up, and then shoot him through the chrono. Either your magneto speed or your F1 chrony or whatever you use. You should be using magneto speed. Load him up and shoot him. Send him down range and record velocity. And when you do that, you'll find that there will be a flat spot where, like, no matter what velocity, no matter how much powder you fed it, 2/10, 3/10 more, it is just like right there in the money. So I actually did this with 85 grain TSX with a 243, which is kind of a lame bullet. But I had a lot of them because I didn't know anything when I bought them, so I bought a bunch. Anywho, I had a bunch of them, so I said, what the hell? Try it out with this other powder that I wasn't loading for 243. Load up a workup. Well, sure enough, I loaded a workup, and I found, well, I loaded 2 grains beyond maximum powder charge, thinking, I will never get to this. I'll start seeing primer cratering, I'll start seeing all kinds of stuff. Well, I never saw any of those things, so that sucks. But I did get really good velocity, and in one of them, I had it's actually the max charge. It's like 42.3, 42.5, 42.7. So a 4/10 spread, and the velocity was like 2911, 2707, no, 2911, 2907, 2908 for those 3 charges. So that's 4/10 of a grain, and like flatline. Velocity is basically the same. In fact, that's like you could put that on. I mean, like if you shot 3 rounds of that, you'd be like, oh my god, I have like the winningest round of all time. It's got very little standard deviation. It could be 4/10 of a grain difference. So that's good for a couple reasons. Number one, the Charge Master is great, but maybe it like overthrows. So you can sort that out. It's awesome. And you're in a good, accurate node. So what Mark says is that since they've started using that as a loading method, they have yet to find a rifle that just doesn't shoot that. Maybe I'll walk it back and say maybe Mark has done it out of some cheaper non-custom rifles. But my experience loading for Mark's rifles is that pick a vague amount of powder, stuff it in with a bullet, it'll be a sub-minute load. So maybe it's different. Maybe he's tested out on a bunch of cheap shit rifles. Anyway, I haven't fully gotten through that loading process, but I'm excited about it because I think that that could be a totally valid way. And then you're out 12 or 13 bullets or whatever for your load workup. So let's see how that goes. Now, pressure testing, velocity stuff. The only last reloading thing I'll talk about, just because I put it on my list, and I'm a slave to the list, is that I loaded up some Subsonic 300 Blackout using Hornady's 225 Bowtail Hollow Point, and they're awesome. I shot a sub-minute, which, like, I have a 300 Blackout. I'm fine with. Sub-minute, 3-shot group at 50 yards, which, like, whatever. I shot with a magnified scope. But it's like, it's a ragged hole-ish. It's cloverleaf. It's cloverleaf. It's cloverleaf. At like 1060 feet per second, which is subsonic pretty much everywhere in America, and super quiet. Bullets are stable. Right now, I am getting ready to set headspace, or not headspace, God, shoulder setback on my 7 mag. So this is a bullet body comparator. This is a 7 mag case, and we put the. Ow! That one's broken now. Oh, she ain't pretty no more. We put the case in there, shoulder datum point, and we give it a little spin. We're kind of checking it out. And this is a dimensionless. I mean, like, this dimension doesn't mean anything. It's not SAMI spec or anything. 4.131. 4.130. 4.129. 4.129. I like to pick just 5. That's fine. 4.129. So we'll take the longest one, which was 4.131. This is the one we're going to use for testing purposes. So here's what I do. Run the RAM up, run the die down till it makes contact. Right there. And then I back it off like probably 3/4 of a turn. We leave that lock ring a little loose so we can mess with it. And we'll lube it up. Give it a good shot. Man, that homebrew case lube. It's good stuff. Alright, so we said it was 4.131. Run it through there. Then we check it out. Still 4.131. No surprise there. Give it a little 1/8 turn. Run it through. Check it again. 4.131. We'll get down with it. Sometimes a blow right through it, and then that's just not a ruined case, but maybe that's like a Fowler. It's a cider. 4.131. We'll come up on it. I think I remember last time it's like right at the cam over point, which is a good die. Like, it makes me happy. Ooh, that felt like we Caught a little bit of shoulder there. Maybe. Maybe, just maybe. We did not catch shoulder. We did not catch shoulder right there. Just be Tyler's dumbass reloading podcast. Vlog. Whatever this is. That's what this should be called. Ooh, 4.130. Right on that. Just the cusp. So we'll give that another little... We'll bump it. And then we'll check it. So we are at 129. You'll remember that a couple of these were 4.129. So we'll give it just a skosh more right there. So we want to take them back to about 4.128 in that case, because we kind of want to bump back off the... It's 2.7. It's fine. It's fine. Maybe we loosened up just a little bit. By the way, it's just a little bit of cam over. So we'll take it back. And we'll mark this one, by the way. We'll mark that with an X. We'll find a marker that works. Mark that with an X. That way when we load it, we just know, hey, that's a Fowler. That's a cider. It's a whatever. Probably doesn't matter, but it's a trophy elk or whatever. We don't want to mess that one up. Alright, so we're done talking about reloading stuff, which is good. So we're 56 minutes into it. Another reloading podcast. Blog. Alright, so I live in Texas. As I'm sure you've no doubt seen, there's been a lot of flooding in Houston, which is hours to the east of me, but it is where my wife's family lives. It's not great. So I'd say we didn't get some rain this weekend. We get about 7 inches according to my homemade rain gauge, which is a 5-gallon bucket that I check with a tape measure. But 7 inches is no joke. We'll probably see some pretty good flooding. Still to come off that. Anyway, so the hurricane came in on like Friday night or whatever, made landfall Friday night down at the coast, and we started to get bands of rain Friday night. And my wife had asked what our like disaster preparedness plan was. Which makes sense. Like, she grew up in Houston, and she was home, I think, during Ike, and in Ike, like, they lost power for 4 days or something like that. So she was like, you know, what's our plan? And I was like, well, I mean, really, the only thing we don't have a lot of is water. But, I mean, like, it'll be raining all weekend, so we could capture it if necessary. But I'll go ahead and fill up a couple coolers with water. And that way we got, you know, drinking water for us and the animals for a couple days. Things get too real, we'll load up, head out to my parents' place. Which kind of sucks right now because she's very pregnant, and so that probably wouldn't fly. But my parents live off-grid, so it's kind of the bug-out plan. Anyway, water was kind of the big thing that we didn't have a lot of, but we had a lot of dry goods. The other thing that was, you know, just of concern was that I drove my truck to work on Friday morning on a quarter tank of gas. It's kind of, you know, it's one of those, like, Prepper 101 things. You should always have, like, half tank or better in your car. And I just wasn't good about it. My wife's car was nearly empty as well, so I'm going to try to be better about that, because in an emergency, if you do need to leave town for whatever reason, you want to make sure that you have the fuel necessary to actually get you out of town, which I did not have, so my bad. My fault on that one. But other than that, you know, we had like a lot of dry goods. We've got a couple freezers where the food, which I realize is not worth shit if you don't have electricity, but it will keep things relatively cold for, a day or two. So it's worth at least having that. I actually bought a pressure canner this week, and I'm going to can up a lot of the venison that I didn't end up doing anything with this year. And that way we do have protein, and then rice, beans, flour, butter, that sort of stuff. I think a lot of people will really get into like prepping for years at a time, when the reality is like the overwhelming majority of the situations that you would face are hurricane comes to town, and we need to make sure we have water for the next week or whatever. Obviously, I had a couple guns around the house. I didn't worry about looters in Austin, but it's stuff that happens elsewhere. You should be prepared. You should be in the mindset. You should have the tools. You should have the training. Training's the biggest part of it. Fear the man with a $500 AR that's had 10,000 rounds through it. Probably knows what he's doing. So, have a plan. Have a secondary plan. Have a tertiary plan. Know how to shoot. Know when to shoot. I think have food. Have water, which I didn't have enough of. Luckily, we never lost power or anything. It was a non-event. But in urban areas, like if you look at Houston right now, Houston's in a bad way. Read something the other day that said that 10,000 people need to be rescued in Houston. It's 10,000 people who didn't have a plan. So have a plan. Know when to activate on that plan. Know when shit's gotten sideways and you need to like leave town, or you need to hunker down, or you need to turn the lights off or keep the lights on, that sort of stuff. But think about it. One of the most influential coaches I ever had taught me a lot about like getting ready for a race. And I remember her telling me, when you get into the blocks and then they give you the command set, and that's your time to rise up out of the blocks, tense every muscle, get ready to go, the gun goes off and you take off. She talked a lot about mindset, which I never, as a 14 or 15-year-old kid, had never really given a lot of thought to. And I remember her telling me, when you get down in the blocks, start to clear your mind. Get your head straight. Don't think about your girlfriend. Don't think about the parties you're going to after this. Don't think about your homework. Don't think about anything else. Clear that stuff from your mind. Go through the same thing every time. Walk yourself back into the blocks. Get to a good place. Control your breathing. When set happens, get set and form the mental connection between your brain and the tip of your toe, and be in a place where you are ready to fire as soon as the gun goes off. And it was the first time I'd ever given conscious thought to having a plan and rehearsing the plan in your mind before you actually go through with it. And it's startling how many people are willing to just wing it, like without ever trying first. Like that's part of just going to class, like going to a class for anything, a shooting class, a hiking class, a fishing class, a camping class, whatever. Those sorts of things are a dry run for you and for your mind and for your brain. Like, you'll be less stressed if you have to do something if you've already practiced it. So that's not to say you need to be like those guys in the National Geographic who drill their family on like a bug out plan or anything like that. I don't think you need to be at that level. I mean, your choice. Feel free to be at that level. But I do think you need to like go camping. Start a fire without the help of lighters. Like, sleep outside for a couple nights. See how that goes for you, you know? You don't have to do it all the time, but like, At least have that in the memory bank. You know, people think it's crazy, but like, if you are intent on defending your home with a gun, like, unload it, clear it, make it safe, and then walk through your house with your gun. Try out gear. Like, if you need a new flashlight for your rifle, clip that son of a bitch on there, clear your rifle, make it safe. Walk through the house, turn the light on. Like, if you think you want to wear a sling on your rifle for your home defense, put that sling on. Try to move through your house, like maintaining concealment, and see how that sling works with you or against you. If you have kids, have them be in their room. Lay down in bed. Go time. Your rifle's under the bed in a safe. You got to enter the keypad. Tell your wife to yell at you. Whatever. Like, drill those skills a little bit. Like, you don't have to go crazy. Do it once or twice. That's better than nothing at all. Like, good enough is the enemy of perfect. Perfect is the enemy of good. Perfect is the enemy of good enough. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be a Navy SEAL or a Delta Tier 1 fucking super awesome operator. Like, be a guy who's done it once, at a minimum. And twice is better and 3 times is even better than that, and so on and so forth. But, like, drill it once or twice. Run through it. Run through it slowly. Start to add some more speed to it. Like, take the opportunity to dry fire your pistol a couple times a week, Clear it. Run it through the holster. Go in your garage. Go in your shop if you have one. I'm very lucky to have a shop here. Like, get home early from work. Whatever you need to do, man, just, like, run through those things. Like, everything has the potential to be a disaster. You just got to do your part to make sure that it doesn't. Like, you can't help the fact that a hurricane comes, right? Like, that's outside of your control. But you can control how you react to that hurricane. And I love a good segue. So, I had, said repeatedly, I took this really great class from Carl Wren a while back, a long time ago. Actually, I need to get back out and go see Carl because he's a great teacher. But I took this great class. It was a non-shooting class. It was just tactics and skills. That was the name of the class. And it was about, like, how to be an effective gun owner. How to use your mind, which is the greatest tool you have. It's not your trigger finger. It's not the gun. It's not your Zev Glock or your Warsport AR or your whatever. It's not any of those things. It's what's between here, Like, this is the most important few inches, right here inside your brain. And we ran through a ton of scenarios with dummy guns. We ran through carjackings. We ran through convenience store robberies. We ran through home invasions. And that was illuminating as shit because we set up a home invasion and, we went off, crash, front door comes knocking down. What do? And immediately, student's got a rubber dummy gun. He's got an AR. We just talked through how to work, concealment, how to pie the room. He is ready to charge forth with all of his brand new skills. Crash, door comes down. He's laying in bed. He grabs his gun. He's running. Bah! Gets capped by the dude's buddy. There's 2 of them. One of them had already come through. He managed to get one guy. Bah! Brain pan. Dead. One guy, still doing great. One hostile. Still in the house, that dude's wife and his children. And he was like, why did you leave the room? And he was like, because those motherfuckers were in my house. And he's like, you're exactly right, they're in your house. Are they in your room? Are they with your wife? Are they with your kids? No. Why are you going after them? They can steal your television? Call the cops, man. That's what the cops are for. Hang out in your space. If they violate this space, you have the best position right now. You're inside, maybe not fully inside, but you're inside-ish. They're OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act. It's a very cliche thing that a lot of people talk about, but it's very true, and it makes a lot of sense. You know, they surprised you. They got inside your loop. You have gotten your gun. They don't know you have a gun. You know where they are. You know where you are. You know where your spouse is. Maybe you know where your kids are. You can get inside their loop now. But if you go charging out, one to the dome, every time. You run the risk every single time. So you need to think about what that home invasion scenario looks like. So I bring this up because we were talking about birth of our upcoming son, very exciting. We're talking about roughly 9 months prior, and the fact that we were staying at my brother-in-law and sister-in-law's house while they were at the hospital having just delivered their brand new baby. And we were reminiscing, as you do, about 9 months prior when you have a baby due. And we're talking about, you know, it's the weekend that I almost killed our friend Wes. And for backstory, we have a mutual friend, obviously, between the brother-in-law and sister-in-law, Wes. And Wes has a key to their house. We didn't know that. We were upstairs. We heard the front door. And not hearing anybody say anything. We're upstairs. I have a gun. I have a flashlight. It's 11:30 at night. Nothing good happens after 10 o'clock at night. So I went to, you know, I've got my gun. I'm unholstered, man. Like, I have a gun. I am, you know, cocked and locked, ready to rock. Got a flashlight, but it's not on. Pad out. Because my wife had said, I heard the front door. I said, that's not the front door. It's, you hear and stuff. She said, no, it's the front door. So I went out. I padded out. Gun. Fucking light. Got pants and a shirt on. And peek over the railing. You can see the front door. Can't see anybody. But I can hear somebody's in the house. So I gave him a, hello? Not tactically cool. Not, hey, I have a fucking gun, asshole, or anything hard. Just hello? Because sure enough, what's more likely? Somebody has a key to their house and slowly lets himself in at 11:30 at night in Texas, or it's a buddy who has a key and he lets himself in, you know? Well, sure enough, it's Wes, and I know Wes, and Wes goes, hello? And I realized, oh shit, it's Wes. I said, Wes? And he said, yeah, Tyler? I said, hey man, you almost got shot. Not true. Should never shoot at anything unless you got a good sight picture. You wasn't even close to getting shot. But I said, hey man, let me put my gun up. We'll come downstairs and say hello. And my wife was like, how stupid were you? You just went over to the balcony and, like, you know, looked down and, you know, somebody could have shot you. And she's right, because I had not consciously thought about how to move through that house. Probably 6 months prior to that, you know, we live in an older house. It rattles, like, randomly. It has noises. AC kicks on. Walls rattle. We had a framed photo, big framed photo, that was sitting up on our fireplace mantle. And who knows what happened. Maybe it was a cat. Maybe it was, you know, an essential tremor for the house. Thing comes crashing down. Sounds just like broken glass. And the dog just immediately, woo! He's hauling ass downstairs. I've got my gun. I've got the baddest motherfucker, 300 blackout, short-barreled AR with a silencer and a big-ass dumb light. I am ready to go. And grab it. It's right there under the bed. Didn't grab it. I just charged downstairs after the dog. After all that talk I'd had about hanging out upstairs, defending your property, my brain just shut down. Sprinted downstairs. But sure enough, it's just broken glass. My wife is screaming at me at the top of the stairs. She read me the riot act, too. Because she knows what's tactically sound. Don't go running downstairs into a threat you don't know. Nothing downstairs is worth dying over, not even the dog. After that, started drilling a little bit more. You know, think about it. Think about what happens when you hear, bump in the night. Don't be too eager to die. Look, I love the dog. If he runs downstairs and he gets capped, dude, he died doing what he loves, barking at people. I don't need to go out the same way. I have a wife and soon-to-be son. And that actually changes things, because, for right now, our plan is, hey, bump in the night, I got the gun, you bail out to the bathroom, I'm coming around to your side of the bed for concealment, and we're calling 911. And if it comes through the door, I'm shooting it. That's a pretty good plan. That's actually a pretty badass plan. That's the plan we should have stuck to the night that the glass thing broke. We would have felt stupid when the cop showed up and it was glass, but rather be wrong 100 times than be wrong one time. I guess maybe it's not well thought out. So I drill a little more. But we have a son soon, and he'll be in a room that's just across the little landing. That's still tactically probably the best house we'll ever live in. It's great. But the new plan has to be bump in the night, make a fucking beeline for his room. And you know what? I don't have a sling on my rifle right now, but I'll probably have a sling on my rifle for when my son comes, because I'll need to be able to sling my rifle, pick up my son, and shuttle him back to the safety of our room. That's the plan now, and that's a little more involved. And that means that my wife is going to be responsible for herself on her side of the bed. She's probably going to have to give a little call out, a little hey-ho to say, you coming back in? Yeah, I'm coming back in. Don't shoot me. But that's the sort of stuff that, as a couple, you probably need to drill, And that's a little awkward, especially if your spouse is not super pro-gun. Not necessarily not pro-gun, but, if any rational person, I know that, gun people are, you should drill 3 times a night, every night. A wide, vast swath of people that you interact with do not feel that way. And it's very likely, even if you are into guns, you're going to marry someone who's not as passionate about it as you are. Some people do find a person that's super into guns just like they are, and they can drill the piss out of it. They can be that couple from Tremors or whatever that movie is, with the big worms underground. Reba McEntire plays the wife. For the rest of us, we're going to have a spouse who, will go to the range a couple times a year with us and is not nearly as actively involved or engaged. And you're just going to have to say, hey, this is important to me, and this is a thing that I care about, and this is something we can do that's, fairly low impact. Doesn't cost us a dime, costs us 15 minutes, and it'll help me keep my mind at peace, And then run through those scenarios, Bump in the night, gun, door, pick up the baby, door, baby, I'm coming back in, door, lock it, he's with her, gun. That's the modification, right? So, speaking of the dog, final thought for the evening. And because I talked about reloading so much, this has run longer than it should have, frankly. But that's fine. So I love that dog. He's a big, dumb animal, but I love him. And last year we found out that he had heartworms, which was mind-blowing to us since we'd had him on topical heartworm meds, and he lives the life of a prince. He eats the best food, and he has Canadian healthcare. Or whatever's better than Canadian, whatever socialized medicine is better than Canadian healthcare. He has that. Super socialized. Anyway, we took him in to get his teeth. Actually, that's what happened. We took him in to get his teeth cleaned, to be put under so that he could get his chompers cleaned, and then get his nails trimmed. And the vet said, hey, we ran blood work before we did this. He has heartworms. So, long and protracted story. I should write about it so that I can write him off of my effing taxes. If If anybody will pay me any money off the website for that one story, I can write him off. It'd be awesome. Anyway, so he had heartworms. Many thousands of dollars later, he no longer has heartworms. He's finally through his treatment. The change in that dog and his energy level is incredible. Like, I feel like a real shit pet owner because I just didn't recognize that he was like super lethargic. He had kind of a dry cough. He didn't really like to go on runs or anything else like that. Little dude's probably he gets a heartworm test every year, so up to a year he's had heartworms, or he had heartworms, and I just feel like a total bag, just a bag of shit because his demeanor has changed so much. He's so much happier. He's so much more energetic. He's so much more engaged. He's just like, he's a whole new animal. He's probably better than when we first got him. And it's really breathed a lot of life back into him, which is incredible to see. So, while you're out making hurricane preparations, while you're drilling your home defense scenario, while you're doing all those other things, take your animals to the vet manually and go get a heartworm test done. Turns out you could totally have a dog or a cat or a horse, I guess. I don't know if horses get heartworms. That's what I'm talking about. Shit falls over. Happens all the time. Did you see I was ready? Get your animals checked out for heartworms. Could save their life. If they do have it, you'll likely find out that their demeanor changes like a lot for the positive. So that's the podcast. And by podcast, I was so in the zone of saying podcast for so long. That's the video log. I appreciate the 5 people who watch this. There's literally billions, petabytes of video on YouTube for you to watch, so I'm glad you came by and watched this. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks for hanging in there. See you around.